After 3 years and almost 8 months, I have finally reached 3,000 subscribers. This is a huge milestone for me, and I am very, very glad to be here and where I'm at today. And not even just in subscribers, where my channel's at, in terms of views and just participation and community. And to celebrate, like I already wasn't going to do this in November, I decided I'm going to do a Tales of the Goosebumps ranking, but not just for the 6 books, which we'll do at the end of the video, but for all 60 stories within each book. Yes, there are 10 stories within each book, and 60 stories overall. We're going to be ranking them worst to best in this video, in honor of me reaching this milestone, 3,000 subscribers. Yeah, I am very excited to do this. There is a lot to be said about some of these, but not a lot about some others, so don't expect me to go into a lot of detail in some of these. This is going to be very random in how I'm going to get in detail in some of them, because there's some of them like, I don't like it, moving on. Or somewhere I'm like, this one had a really interesting idea here, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there's going to be differences in detail and how much I go into it. But overall, I will be discussing every story through each segment, worst to best, all 60 in one video. This is gonna be crazy. And before I dive into that, I want to say thank you guys so much for 3,000 subscribers. I kind of already said this, but trust me, it means a lot to me. I didn't really think I'd get here, let alone within 4 years almost, because it seriously has almost been 4 years. It will have been 4 years in February since I have started this channel up, you know, pumping out Goosebumps content. And it's just really hard to believe that I have gotten to 3,000 subs, but here I am, and I'm very, very grateful. This is about the only thing I have to grasp onto that is special to me besides my family. Yeah, and that is a serious note. So, yeah, this is seriously special to me. And now, let's rank all 60 Tales to Give You Goosebumps short stories. Starting off with my first one, number 60, the absolute worst story in Tales to Give You Goosebumps. And this one gets a 2 out of 10. Something Strange About Marcy from Tales to Give You Goosebumps number 5. I won't be saying every book, it'll just be implied throughout the video. When I'm holding up a book, it's from that one. Something Strange About Marcy is a solid story for literally the entirety of it, but it is... yeah, it is completely ruined by one sentence. I am not even kidding. One sentence, and of course the twist, completely ruins the story. And there will be some minor spoilers. Let's just say it is a huge recontextualization that involves apes. Yeah, it is horrible and utterly terrible. And whilst I really enjoyed it, I cannot forgive it for the final, most horrible, horrific, and not in a good way sentence I've ever read in one of these goddamn short stories. Number 59, Strained Peas. Yeah, this is literally the most unfun, not very good horror story I've ever seen. And yeah, it's a baby. It's a killer fucking baby, basically. No. Number 58, You Gotta Believe Me. Now, this one sounds like it's right up my alley. It's an alien story, but excluding a minor thing I liked involving television and some psychopathic parents, is kind of a funny detail. It's just not it. It is probably the most bland and unoriginal alien story I've ever read. And thanks to it being a short story and not having time to flesh out this idea, albeit very unoriginal, like I said, and uninteresting, there was nothing that could have been done to make it even remotely cool. Yeah, it is bland, and I have no fondness to it at all. I'm not going to dick suck it because there's aliens. It is just not good, like, at all. Number 57, Marshmallow Surprise. This is the definition of throw some random shit at the wall, kids will read it anyways. Yeah, this one makes little to no sense. It turns from a Hansel and Gretel ripoff to a fucking werewolf story in a matter of 2 seconds. And I very much dislike it. It is not good at all, and it is just a horribly executed idea with nothing to it. Yeah. Next up, and this is a 4 out of 10, so we're getting a little higher now. At number 56, we have Mr. Teddy. Now, I'm very surprised this landed so low. But Mr. Teddy is literally just a Night of the Living Dummy clone, and it's 12 pages long. And I don't hate it all, but there's absolutely nothing special to it. And there's also an annoying sibling character, so yeah. Nothing special to this one. Number 55, Home Sweet Home. This one is really strange and just not in a good way. It involves a spider and an old lady and a garage sale. Just leave it at that. And it could have been cool, but his execution just fell flat on its face, probably due to the very short page count. Next up, number 54, Don't Sit On The Grunt, the first story in this book. Killer giant red koosh ball. I mean, what the fuck? It isn't very good at all. There's nothing to it. There's nothing that sticks out. It's just a bland story about basically a killer fucking koosh ball. Yeah. Next up, The Fun Prince of Doom. Really whack-ass ending, and I just didn't enjoy my time with it. It's basically like another, magic, fortune teller type story. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of the trope or idea from the first place. And here, it's just boring. It is a boring final story to this book. Next up, Why I Hate Jack Frost. It's just a bland Freddy Krueger ripoff. And also, it works sometimes. And I can give it props because it ain't terrible. There's, nothing special to behold here. And I genuinely just don't like it very much. Next up, Strangers in the Woods. This one had some really shitty reveals and just terrible explanations, as well as a really half-assed alien ending. And almost, I love aliens again? No, this doesn't do it for me at all. Haunted House Game. It is just the most bland horror-based story ever. There was a scream from the attic. There was a knocking at the window. I'm bored as hell. Not anything special. I'm talking to you, 5-star givers. And, there's nothing to it besides the actually really good ending. I'll give it that. Next up, Good Friends. It is a really half-assed play on schizophrenia, and there is nothing special to it at all. A lot of these that I put lower don't have anything pizzazzy or awesome about them. This is just a really quick, shitty attempt at something, and this is no different. This is a really shitty attempt at a schizophrenia story, and whilst it's not it represents it horribly, I mean, it kinda, because I know someone with schizophrenia very well. It's just bruh, this doesn't really do anything for me. And I don't think it does much for other people too. I believe this is a hated one. Next up, Fun with Spelling. It's a little fun, but that's about it. The concept is, once again, related to magic, and whilst I like the idea of how these spells are cast, it is easily one of the least interesting stories I've ever read in Goosebumps, bar none. And it's ghostwritten, by the way, so it's pretty funny. Next up, Suckers. This is one I almost want to love with its weird idea of this green slime creature coming out of this treasure chest. But, it just falls flat. There's nothing to it once again. And, I guess I can have fun with it, but it's it's not amazing. But it might be a guilty pleasure. Next up, The Ghost Sitter. What the fuck were the reveals? I wasn't a big fan of the reveals in this one. Most there was some nice tension, I guess, or build up to what's in the house. Is there a ghost? Are they babysitting ghosts? That doesn't really do anything for me. There is no pizzazz, there's no kick, there's just nothing. It is a bland-ass reveal of, hey, it's a pig, not a ghost. I guess poorly executed. Vampire in the Neighborhood. Very bland. It's about the most by-the-number story you can possibly get. There's this girl who is suspected to be a vampire, very similar to a story in actually Tales 4, but I way prefer over this. And there is nothing special to this. They spy on her, and it turns out that there's a shocking recontextualization. And also, it's kind of good. The story attached to it is, just trying to ease its way over to that, reveal, which does shock you, but the build up to that ain't very good. Next up, the very first Tales to Give You Goosebumps story, The House of No Return. It is a fine, and I mean very fine, this is a 6 out of 10 ghost story about a haunted house. The episode's relatively accurate, and it's good. I do appreciate the Halloween atmosphere and the story being relatively simple and a nice simple start, but overall it's nothing I'd ever look fondly on or come back to and I'm being really fair, because this is the first. Like, seriously. There is nothing special here, but I can't give it more dog shit than that, because it is the first one. I mean, this was the first attempt, I think, unless they wrote these out of order. But yeah, House of the Return, really nothing to it. Next up, Aliens in the Garden. Weird-ass concept. The twist ending is taken straight out of a Twilight Zone episode. I mean that literally. There's a Twilight Zone with the exact same ending, where it turns out the invaders are actually the humans, and the people we've been following are the aliens. Yeah, same fucking twist ending as a Twilight Zone episode. And I like that ending, but that's about it. This is a very bland, not extremely awesomely executed idea of, hey, little tiny aliens get attacked by bullies. Let's save them. There's nothing to it. And yeah, I enjoyed it, but that's about it. I just enjoyed it. Next up, The Chalk Closet, which is also from this book. And it's the first story from this book. It had a really good ending and some nice tension and build-up, but besides that, it's really just aiming to get to that ending point, and that's all it's building up to. And it's not exactly disappointing, but, like, I wish there was something more to the story besides just straight up, I want to build up to this one page. That's all what's, leading towards is, what's in the chalk closet? And nothing more, which is sadly the case with a lot of these Tales of Goosebumps stories, where it's really leading up to one thing, and that's kind of sad. Next up, Something's Fishy. This is a very weird tale about a boy in his fish tank. It has a very weird concept, and it could pass off as a Deep Trouble spinoff, but either way, it is a very weird story, and for that, I just didn't really enjoy this one all too much. But I do like it a little, but seriously, it's just weird as hell. How I Won My Bat. This is one of my favorite endings, but sadly, besides that, is a sports story, and that isn't really interesting to me. Let alone, it's just kind of a slower burn, and it's usually, leading up to this one idea of what happens if this kid doesn't return this bat. Which is something I'm like, okay, whatever. But still, I really like the ending. That's literally why it is this high, is because the ending is pretty darn cool. Nutcracker Nightmare, really cool concept, and thank the Lord it isn't leading to one point. In fact, it is rather being driven by this one point, but it's not like leading up to it, it's being throughout the story at this point, which is that this lady is evil and this girl is maybe caught in the mix of her and her spell. And yeah, it's a really cool concept, but sadly, there is not much to it besides that. But I did enjoy it, but it is nothing crazy. Next up, Change for the Strange. This is easily the most forgettable and least talked about Tales of Goosebumps story of all time. And yeah, there is like really not a lot to it besides this, hey, this pet store, not pet store, clothing store that turns you into basically a pet. These clothes, whatever they're made of or whatever material they're made of, resonates with an animal, so it kind of turns you into that, which is cool, but it really doesn't do much with it. It is a simple execution of the idea, nothing more. I guess I liked it. Next up, Click. This is a very infamous story and episode. The episode is really good too. In fact, I way prefer it. Overall enjoyment at least. But the short story adaptation or the original source material is quite good too. I really like where the story goes. The concept is solid, and it's some nice fun. But besides that, it is just whatever story. Nothing that I think is worth much more than just a quick little fun read. Next up, Perfect School, another very infamous one. I think Perfect School is good, pretty good territory. I widely prefer the episode, and it might be a biasy reason why I don't like this one as much. And also, I like the start half of this one more than the episode. I think, whilst this one has a way better, creepier idea for it here involving vents, which was kind of touched upon in the episode, but not in the same way. It doesn't live up to what the episode is, and honestly, yeah, there's probably biasy reasons why I don't prefer this over the episode, let alone why I don't like this as much, or anywhere near as much as the episode. Well, kinda. But yeah, it's good, but nothing crazy for me. Next up, Teacher's Pet, which is another iconic episode, for the wrong reasons, but I actually quite enjoyed this story, definitely a lot more in the original episode, not the original episode, but the episode adaptation of this. It's quite different. It involves a school, so completely different already, instead of a camp story, which is really weird already. I think it's good. It's a simple idea where this teacher's obsessed with snakes, and he may or may not have a dark secret, which is really obvious, especially if you watch the episode, you already know what's coming. But I like it, and it is a nice, dark, somber ending. Don't Wake Mummy, another infamous story from Tales That Give You Goosebumps, specifically the episode version once again. This is really just good, but I don't think it is amazing, and it's not anywhere near my favorite Mummy story, but overall it is a solid story with something unique from the episode, kind of like a Sardo-esque magic shop involved. Sort of magic. It's a weird novelty shop. It has some nice aspects. I really like the ending. But besides all that, it is just fine. A Cat's Tale, which is quite similar to Cry of the Cat in ways, where it involves a cat villain. They may not be doing something similar to the main character, or more in leaning to the episode of Cry of the Cat, of all things. It's solid, but I'm not in love with it or anything. I really like the ending. It's kind of a goofy, bittersweet ending where, yeah, they kind of win, but they gotta do this 8 more times, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's good. But, once again, nothing that is gonna blow you away. Next up, Monster in the Ice. This is really saved by its concept, and I think the concept is really cool. Basically, it's another one of these object-possessing the wearer stories that completionist loves. And, yeah, it's good. These basically roller skates, which might be hinted at, well, not roller skates, but ice skates, might be hinted at here. I don't know. Take over this kid and turn into a monster on the ice. Yeah, horrible pun. It's fine. There's an annoying character in there. I believe it's the sister, but overall, it is still, it's good. But, once again, it's just more saved by its concept than the actual story attached to it. Next up, I am very disappointed with this one. The Spacesuit Snatcher. This one had potential, especially from the get-go. The first half of the story is really wholesome and has some great writing. But, it ends up just being a sort of waste of time fake out, which results in a decent ending, but it, half the story is just like a fake out. Yeah, not exactly my cup of tea when it comes to these. Like, I prefer not to waste time. And sadly, this one just so happened to, hey, waste time, which is also the final story of this book. Yeah, really was hoping to love this because it's alien themed, but sadly, no. Next up, the final story I believe I'm throwing out in this one today, Broken Dolls. Yeah, Broken Doll is really good, but I don't think it even scratches my 8 out of 10, sadly, so yeah, it just goes to show what I think of this book. Broken Dolls is a really cool concept, and has some nice horror involved, maybe a kid turning into a doll, and there's some nice scenes, there's some nice scares, and I say this is one of the most ambitious stories in all of Tales That Give You Goosebumps. It's trying to go for something way larger than it can handle. That could easily be a full story, but it doesn't quite get there, and I still really enjoyed it, but still, I think it was getting a little too ambitious. Now we're getting into the real meat of it. Pumpkin Juice. This is the first story from this book, and it's nothing crazy. It's just a simple, let's make pumpkin juice story. They turn into a werewolf story. It has a solid ending, but I feel like it gets off the ground too quickly. The intro's a little too abrupt, like just really trying to push it, which is not my cup of tea. I prefer good pacing, where we're not trying to force shit in here, cram it into this 12-page story, and they really tried to. Ghostwriters or Stine, whoever wrote this in factuality, but either way, it's good. Solid little Halloween werewolf story, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Next up, Attack of the Tattoo, once again from this book, and it's actually the very next story in this book. This is one of the fan favorites from this book. When I hear people talk about this book, it's always like, tattoo, that's a good one. The concept is great. I think it's one of the best concepts in Tales to Give You Goosebumps history, but overall, as a story, it doesn't work for me very much. I think it's a little repetitive with it and doesn't do anything unique. It is seriously just snake spawns. Let's deal with it real quick. We patiently await this impending goal of maybe resolving this issue. There's a good twist ending, which I think was very expertly foreshadowed, but either way, It's not amazing. Next up, the Double Dip Horror. This is a almost really good short story. And this is actually probably the most famous and well-liked one from this book, and this is a hated one. And this is also one of my favorites from this Tales series, so, I mean, book-wise. The story, Double Dip Horror. Basically, it's a bit darker than your average story. Involves the deceased twins. I'll leave it at that. There's also skiing, hinted out on the cover. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it is really nice, and a bit of a, obviously, darker change of pace for the series. And I really liked my time with it, and I thought it was nice and really pleasant to read. A fan favorite as of late, more of a cult following. Some of my friends really like this one. What's Cooking? And let me say, they cooked. Ghostwriters or Stine, whoever actually wrote this one. Well, this one, it lands at average for me. I actually really see what people like. And whilst I'm not a big fan of it because it is too much slasher in my eyes, because I really like it when kids' horror is the kids' horror, but goes a little far. This one goes, like, really out of league, it feels. Basically, there's just a murderous lunch lady. And there's a nice urban legend attached to it, but still, it is nice. Something I really enjoyed, and probably will come back to do, but do I see this being a fan favorite? Yes, but it's just personally not one of my favorites. Next up, Attack of the Christmas Presents. This is basically a similar idea to Night of the Living Dummy, and this is what Mr. Teddy should have been. It's a way more fun and less bland and blatant copy of Night of the Living Dummy, where this kid gets a present from his uncle, and, maybe it's alive, and it's maybe has some dangerous aspects to it. But the twist ending is so bonkers, out of left field, kind of funny, but it is hinted at, that I actually really like the story. And I originally gave it a way higher score. This was my all-time favorite before, from this book. But, you know, after consideration, and this is also the final Tales story ever, might I say, it's not that good. It's not amazing, but I still really enjoy this one. I think it's a guilty pleasure of mine. Super fun, but nothing absolutely crazy and, you know, not super big. It's just a simple robo-tag story, if you know what I mean. You know, about a killer robot doll. Doesn't do anything crazier than that. Next up, Please Don't Feed the Bears from Tales to Give You Goosebumps Book 4 of all stories, because this is like the least Halloween-y of this book, minus Old Story, which doesn't mention Halloween at all. Talk about that story later. Please Don't Feed the Bears is basically Care Bear theme park, and it is fun. Enough said. Next up, Santa's Helpers, another Christmas story, and I gotta say, this one's just another wild one. This book had a lot of wild stories, and basically, Santa comes to town, right? This one actually involves Santa, and it is fun. It's a little weird, and it has a really nice ending. But besides that, I don't think it's great, and I wish there was a little more to it with the idea, and I wish there was a little more done that was actually scary, but overall, it is a fun time and a blast. Next up, The Scarecrow. Now, this one had a really cool idea behind it, and I really enjoyed my time with it. And whilst it was really obvious where it was going towards the ends, where maybe he was leading up to a certain character doing an action that was done by other characters, or maybe they didn't. Read it, find out. The ending is like, the fuck, man? I wasn't a big fan of the ending, and the idea wasn't played out, you know, awesomely. It was also a little repetitive. But yeah, Scarecrow is definitely one of the more interesting stories from this book. Trying to be something bigger than what it can be type story, you know. It's a bit ambitious. Match Lunchbox. Very weird title, but I think this is a very fun one, and it's quite similar to a story called Mr. Slobber, I can't remember. And this isn't a Goosebumps story, but it's from a TV show called Monsters. It involves, well, a certain dinosaur-like creature coming out of a certain children's-related item. That one had cereal, this is a lunchbox. And yeah, the horror is nice, and it's really funny at the same time, because these are goofy-ass creatures, and it's fun. That's all the story needed to be this high in the video. Yeah, it was just a really fun story. Next up, I'm Telling, another infamous one. Not for the title, but for the Gargoyle and concept. This was in Goosebumps the game, by the way. Briefly, and it didn't do much besides play as a mechanic, but really cool that this was in there. I'm Telling, it's a gargoyle story. The Gargoyle story of all Gargoyle stories in Goosebumps. One of the very few, or I think one of the only ones at all. It's good. Doesn't do anything absolutely bonkers or crazy. It's not going to blow you away, but it is a good story, and I had a good time with it, and I think it is decently interesting. Next up, Werewolf's First Night. We're getting to some of my personal favorites now. Werewolf's First Night is a seriously good story. It's simple and plays on some Goosebumps ideas that we have seen a lot before. I literally just read one of the worst kids' horror books ever, and it played the exact same idea. Maybe there's something involving family bloodline or family history that may or may not result in this kid turning into a monster type story, you know? And that being a werewolf. The ending is one of the most awesomely written, just cool-ass endings I have ever read to a tale story, let alone a Goosebumps story at all. It's just a nice one-liner ending. Not even a one-liner, but like just a whole final section. It was good. It's good. It is a solid story, but albeit, I wish there was something more to it in terms of the build-up to this thing. 'Cause it was leading up to that, like, build-up, sort of. Next up, The Haunted Guitar, the first story in this collection here. It is extremely simple. It is a haunted guitar, but it is a fun, wacky story, an idea that doesn't try to be anything, gonna blow you away besides the fact that it is what it says. And I really like the simplicity of it. It's a nice start, and it's a really, cool idea, which is what really helps the score. It's a cool idea of a haunted guitar. Next up, Stuck in 1957. This is a seriously underrated story. Not a lot of people rate this as high as I do, and I think this one is a lot of fun. It basically involves time travel, but in a less expected way, and it involves clothes. It's pretty cool. Is it gonna blow you away? No. Is it scary? Not really. It's one of the least scary tales. Give you some stories if you were to get scared by any of them. If you're like a 10-year-old, 5-year-old, that range, you're not going to get scared by this one. But it's still one of the more interesting Twilight Zone-y type ideas that I have seen. It's really good. Next up, Poison Ivy. You battle fly traps. Aftershave. Those are the words I needed to say, and now we're done. It is a really fun time. Enough said. Next up, The Wish. Bonkers fucking twist ending. But the concept was kind of underutilized, and whilst I really like this, I wish there's more to it, but still, it is a great time, albeit really short. But yeah, like I said, the ending is great. Just gonna dig stuck on that real quick. Next up, a very infamous story for its taboo aspects. An old story. Finally talking about it. Well, it landed this high, so I must really like it, and I do. It is a fun, this super inappropriate, but fucking fun nonetheless story, and I can get behind it. I had a really fun time with it, and whilst it has nothing to do with Halloween, for it being in the Halloween collection, there is literally no word Halloween said in this, funny enough. It's good. It is a really, really good short story. And I had a lot of fun with it. Even if it is disgusting and kind of, pedophilic in a way. It's a fun time, and I can forgive it for being weird. Next up, another really famous short story, A Holly Jolly Holiday. Basically, you're getting mind controlled by your TV from this really cringy Christmas special, apparently. It's good. It is a nice horror idea, and I think it was executed very well. Doctor's Horror's House of Video. Another famous one, borderline, from one of the earlier ones, of course. And it's just another one I don't have a lot to say about. It's good. Really good, actually. It is a fun idea. But it doesn't go far past that. That's something I kind of, on. It really doesn't do anything past the very simple idea, but it's good. I really like the concept. Next up, the Ice Vampire. One of the coolest vampires I have seen in Goosebumps. One of the very few, by the way, involving ice, of course. And I think it is really, really, really neat. It had a solid story, but that's all it really needed. It's just a solid idea about a ice vampire. Kind of a Night of the Living Dummy ripoff at the same time too, where it comes to life from being inanimate, which is pretty cool. Now we're entering my absolute favorite short stories in all of Goosebumps history. Starting off with Live Bait. This is just a wild, crazy ride. or boat ride, or, going along the stream, or the rapids, in this case. Basically, go to this bait shop. It's really creepy. There's some weird stuff. There's some funny remarks. And you get used as bait for a giant fucking fish monster. And I fucking love it. Borderline, of course, this isn't a 10 out of 10. We're in the 9 out of 10 still. I didn't really mention that, but we are in the 9 out of 10s. We've been in there for actually quite a bit now. And yeah, I really like this short story. It's just a blast, and that's all it seemingly intended to be, was this wild story about being live bait. Really good. For the birds. Now, this is one I shouldn't love, alright? I honestly don't know why I appealed to this so much. It's ideas that you have a family that you don't really fit in with and you don't like, which is something I really resonate with, because not that I agree with it, it's just something I personally feel for. I really feel bad for people who have this type of family where they're kind of forced into doing something they don't want to do, like they expect higher from them. And that's something that's touched upon, which was just really nice to see. Probably why I gravitated to it so much. And also the fact that it kind of got revenge. It is a bit of a revenge story, but it's like a justified one, because of kind of like family pressure. And it has one of the best, most wild, weird endings I have ever seen in Goosebumps history. I love the ending of this story. Next up, Awesome Ants, one of my personal favorite episodes and as well short stories. Whilst the intro to this is very similar, it's basically Attack of the Killer Ants. It's just very simple idea. There's giant ants and you get attacked. And whilst it does dwell on that a little, I think that's actually to its favor. It spends most of the story building up it, but not in a way where it's like, oh, I see that one coming, unless you've watched the episode. And then it has a very wild twist ending where it kind of reverse rolls the ants. And I just fucking love this. This is a fun, wild story, and that's what I'm really asking for when I read these, is a fun time, which sometimes they can't deliver on, as well as a wild but catchy and interesting idea. And this one delivered hella. And this is one of my 9.5s out of 10s. We have one more if we get into my 10 out of 10s. Again, from this book, we have Bats About Bats. Final 9.5 out of 10. Before we get into our perfect scores, pretty much. Bats About Bats is Vampire in the Neighborhood, but done right, I feel, or way better. Well, that one didn't really lack much. This one added much. It added more of a plot or more something to grasp with. There's a nice prank scene, which is actually quite funny. One of the few I actually enjoyed in Goosebumps. And a great twist ending and a just really, really fun story. Unlike Vampire Neighborhood, it's kind of a slog, because there's really nothing to grasp on or nothing interesting happening. Besides, hey, I guess they're a vampire, which is obviously not true, because in Goosebumps fashion, if you suspect one thing, it's obviously the other. Yeah. Unless there's a fake out in like Zombie Halloween. But yeah, Bats About Bats is really good, and I'm kind of bats about the story. Now entering the 10 out of 10s, we have Shell Shocker, one of the most infamous for being so darn good stories and tales to give you goosebumps. Shell Shocker is a very simple idea, but the execution is just golden. It is a fun ride, and this is the biggest one that is obviously trying to be a fun time, of just a girl going into this disturbing cave to just get eaten up by a fucking giant crab. The twist is one of the most just bonkers, but I fucking love it twist I have ever seen in Goosebumps. This ride up there is really fun, and the idea alone of this shell that mysteriously talks to you for no reasons, but you find out it's a little evil-ass crab in there, it's just so fun. I love it, and that's really all there is to it. If there was a little more, I might put this higher, but honestly, it doesn't really need that. It is one of the best short stories ever. Next up, now entering my top 5, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. It is a mirror horror story and involves clones. I enjoyed it a fucking ton. I think it is a really, really fun time. And it seems like it's going for something more bold here, and has themes of narcissism. Yeah, I fucking said it. Or at least some hinted at ideas of it, and it's good. It's a really, really good short story, and probably gravitate to a lot because of the mirror idea. It's just really fun. Next up, Tune In Tomorrow. It's one of those stories where it's like, whatever happens on the TV, or whatever happens in this fictional world happens to me. Basically, it's your fate is written type story. You know what I'm talking about. whatever happened there happens to me. It's really good. It is a solid execution, the idea, and it has a very nice mood of this rainstorm going on, and I highly enjoyed it. Next up, this is probably my personal favorite, but I don't think it's the best. Goblin's Glare. This is one that I constantly think about, and I only read it like a month ago, almost 2 months ago now, for the first time ever. Goblin's Glare left me speechless with the final sentence. Alright, this whole story is building up this with this dream sequences, of all things, about this goblin coming to life, this papier-mâché goblin, which is a really weird but cool idea. And when it finally happens, this goblin is a really cool villain and a really cool dude, because he's super chill. But you're like, why is he so chill? Why is he not like, I probably should stop this kid so much? But the whole time he's trying to explain to him that he's in his fucking dream. This is the goblin's dream, and it's just one of the most what the fuck moments I have ever read, and I absolutely love it. This is easily, I'm gonna say it now, probably my all-time favorite ending in all of Goosebumps history. I said it, Goblin's Glare was one of the best, if not the best ending I have ever read in Goosebumps, just because of how fucking crazy and out of left field it was, but I just adore it. I was left there sitting on my bed when I read this, just like, might make a video just about that. It was so good. My gush session is done now. Let's move on to the 2 best stories in Tales to Give You Goosebumps. Starting off with P.S. Don't Write Back. I fucking love P.S. Don't Write Back. It is a simple, like, almost urban legend type story where there is this creepy camp across the lake, but something's going on at it. And there's an element of abandonment, maybe old letters, of course, and just a lot of crazy stuff building up to the reveal of what's going on at this mysterious camp across the lake. By golly, is the reveal awesome. Basically, it's zombies. Very gross depictions of them. And the reveals at the end of the story and throughout the story, what's going on, it's just so good and accumulates from one of the best camp stories I have ever read. If anything, the best camp story I've ever read. Next to, like, Return to Ghost Camp, I fucking said it, and, like, Camp Nightmare. I absolutely love this story. And, it is easily my second favorite Tales to Give You Goosebumps story, because it is beaten by the penultimate, final, most favorite, awesome, goosebumpy, because it's the most Goosebumps feeling story I've ever read in Tales to Give You Goosebumps. Almost ambitious, because I like him ambitious, but not too ambitious. Perfect, and greatest ideas I read. Spirit of the Harvest Moon is a simple ghost story. Check. I like the simplicity, but it also adds an element of an urban legends, but also a little bit of complexity with it. Check. I really like that idea. There's some nice build-up where it's not leading to a very specific goal, but it's still leading there. Check. There's something we're building up to, and there's some substance throughout. Never check for the substance. And then we have a bonkers twist ending, as well as the entertainment value being through the roof. Ladies and gentlemen, Spirit of the Harvest Moon is one of the best ghost stories I've read in Goosebumps, just because not only is it creepy, it has great build-up and a really, really solid idea. It's fun. It's so fun, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Because I'm sure if this was a full story, which it very well could be, and it feels like it just would fit right into, like, Series 2000, or more specifically the OG series, I think it'd be way less enjoyable, just because it'd probably get repetitive. Here, in this, like, 12, 13-page format, it's simple, but it works, because it doesn't overstay its welcome of, hey, it's night again, oh, there's spirit knocking, fake outs, which are a few, but it's done expertly. Yes, I absolutely love this story, and there's actually an official audiobook version, funny enough, so I was stoked when I found out about that. That never came out, but it was gonna. If y'all want a link to it, I have no idea where to find it, but it's out there. Maybe search it up on Google. Yeah. overall, this is easily the best Tales TV Goosebumps story I've ever read. I absolutely love Spirit Harvest Moon and Goblin's Glare and all these other ones. Yeah. And that is my ranking of all 60 Tales TV Goosebumps stories. And now let's rank these damn books overall, of course. Starting off with my least favorite Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, the actual starter book, Tales to Give You Goosebumps. Dude, I think this is one of the most overrated Goosebumps books ever, just period. This one has almost nothing good about it besides broken dolls, and I think one other story that I can't name on top of my head. The stories in here are way weaker than some of my least favorite Goosebumps stories ever, and some of my least favorite Tales stories ever. Yeah, this one has some really fucking weak stories. Now, next up, this one has some better stories, but none that really shine to me besides For the Birds and I'm Telling. Even more Tales to Give You Goosebumps. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce all these names right. It's good. It's a light good. I give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think it is better because of those two stories, but overall everything else is like, just doesn't really hit. Next up, 4th place, More and More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, book 5. I don't think it's amazing, but it has some really, really good stories in here. One of my favorites is in here, and I think it is overall a solid read. This is actually the average now. This is an 8 out of 10. I think all of these are 8 or 8.5s now. Next up, a seriously underrated one, More and More and More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, book 6. This is the holiday one for Christmas, and I think it is a fun, moody, and very creepy read with a lot of great stories, but some of them are, apparently weaker. Fair enough. Next up, these two can honestly switch around any day, but we have Tales to Give You Goosebumps 2, More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. Yeah, this is a great summer read. There's a lot of really, really, really good stories. Of course, my 2 most favorite ones were in here, and some of our really high-ranking ones. And overall, this is a blast, and I really liked all the stories in here. And next up, we have our number 1 pick, my all-time favorite Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, Still More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. I really enjoyed it. Enough said, it has some great Halloween stories, and they are all a blast, and some of my all-time favorites came from here once again. But it easily flip around with the other place pick, because obviously it had the 2 best stories. Well, this one had some of the best, but this one has the higher average because none of the stories in here are below a 7.5 out of 10. So that just gives you a really, great sense of, hey, this book is really, really goddamn good. It's almost an 8 out of 10 every goddamn story, or higher, because a lot of them land higher. Yeah, really, really good book here. And yeah, that is my ranking of the books and all 60 stories done for my free K sub special. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and tell me what you think of every Tale story below. If you want to rank more of the books overall, or what your favorite Tale story is, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.